Hello everyone, so I'm here today to talk about the Orwell Prize, and this is a prize for political fiction and non-fiction. There's two categories. Before it was together, I think the last 3 years when they separated into fiction and non-fiction, and I have read quite a few books on the list, so I thought I would talk about them. For non-fiction, I've read 4 of the books that are in the list, and those were Do Not Disturb, My First Time Withdrawn, The Right to Sex, and Things I Have Withheld. There is other books in the list, of course. I think the ones that I have not read, several of them are about COVID and about colonialism and stuff. So they sound interesting, but I mean, I didn't have time to read them all. But the Things I Have Withheld, I had read before the prize, and that's by Kay Miller. And Kay Miller is a really good writer from Jamaica, and he talks about race in a very nuanced way, which I really enjoyed. Then Do Not Disturb is by Michaela Wrong, and I had read It's Our Time to Eat by her before, so that's why I chose to read this one, because I really like that one, so I thought I would read this one as well. And this one was about the Rwandan dictatorship. Are we calling it a dictatorship? I don't know. Kagame's regime, which is the current president. And this was interesting to me because I had heard things about Kagame, good and bad. I first heard for the last few years all the good things that he's doing, like banning one-use plastics, and he's really good advocate of renewable energy. He's putting a lot of solar farms on, and I had heard those things about him, and I thought it was very cool. But in the last couple of years, maybe, I have also heard that he was a bit in the dictatorship side of things. And this book talks about that a lot, about how he's putting a good face for the Western world, but he actually is terrorizing a lot of Rwandans, and there is a lot of unspoken killings and things like that. And I like that this book focuses on after the genocide, because most of the things that we read and know about Rwanda is about genocide, but yeah, what happens after, right? So this book talks about that, and yeah, it was very enlightening, I think, because, as I said, Kagame does have a good image outside Rwanda. He is championing a lot of things that the West values. So yeah, this was quite enlightening. And then I also read My First Time Withdrawn, and I read this in audiobook, which I will recommend, because this book is about the immigrants that try to cross the Mediterranean, and there are snippets of calls from these people interjected into the text. So the author of this text is a journalist, and she had a contact within the immigrant community, and so they sent her information about what was happening. And I mean, there is some talk about the people trying to cross and the smugglers and stuff like that, but the main focus of the book is on the detention centers in Libya. So when these immigrants from all over Africa, but mostly Eritrea, some Nigerians, Ethiopia, when they try to cross and they are caught by the guards, they are taken to Libya and then stay in detention centers in Libya for years and years and years, and they are treated horrible. Like the comparison of concentration camps and Guantanamo came up over and over again with regards to these places. And yeah, I mean, I knew that things like that were happening, but seeing it with such detail was really harrowing. There were a lot of names of places, but she said at the beginning that she was not willing to cut that, because these places need to be named, and I agree with her. So it's work of the reader that they need to know about these places and recognize the names. I don't think they should change to be palatable to the wider audience in that sense. And another thing that I really like about this book is that it doesn't shy away from putting the blame where the blame is due. So there is a lot of places where she says, this is basically created by the European Union and their immigration policies. They are giving a lot of money to Libyans to do this, and they don't control what's happening, and the UN also knows about this, and they aren't doing nothing. So I like that she doesn't shy away from blaming who is to blame, even if they are supposed to be like the good guys or whatever. So yeah, I mean, this one was one that I wanted to read, but I was not so sure. But it's probably my favorite of all the things that I have read for this price, and one of my favorites of the year. So I will really, really recommend My Fourth Time with Drown. And then the last one I read was The Right to Sex. And this, I don't know, I guess I expected something different. So The Right to Sex is focused on who is entitled to have sex, and it does have a lot more focus than I was expected on the men, in maybe a negative way, but still, like, it talks a lot about why men think they are entitled to sex and why that's not true, and kind of deconstruct the arguments made about that and what is consent and all of that, but a lot from the men's perspective and trying to argue with the men's reasoning, which for some reason I didn't expect that. I thought it was going to be more from the women's perspective, and yeah, that was my expectation. So it's not like it's the fault of the book necessarily, but yeah, I think it is important for people that want to read to be aware that that's a big part of the book. Also, it was quite academic, so it was really slow going when I was reading it. I'm glad I read it, but again, it was not what I expected. So from the ones I've read, my favorite to win the prize is My Fourth Time with Drown. But I would also be super happy if Things I Have Withheld won. I thought that was also a very, very good book. In the fiction category, I have managed to read all of the books. I had read some before, and many of them are really short, so I ended up reading all of them. And so there is A Passage North, which I had already read for the the Booker Prize last year, and I have a review for it, and I really, really enjoy, and I'm very happy that it's in this prize, and I will be happy if it wins. Then there is Appliance by Yeo Morgan, which I didn't really like, to be honest. It's about how technology affects people. But it's very it's like vignettes, short story type of thing, and the connections are not very strong between things, and it's kind of trying to do too many things in too little space, and it just doesn't work very well, I think. Then Assembly by Natasha Brown. I enjoyed a lot more than I thought I was going to. I don't know, for some reason I have seen this everywhere in BookTube, and everyone was praising, but nobody was giving too much information. And yeah, I that always doesn't. It makes me think that it's just one of those books that people read because it's from a Black woman and it has to be. It's important, or like it's saying something in an educative way, but it was not like that. It was the everyday racism that this Black woman, middle class Black woman, experiences in her life. And I mean, a part of it is that she has a white boyfriend, and the boyfriend's family is not nice to her, but also her co-workers, how did they treat her, and yeah, assumptions that people make about her in general just because she's Black. And yeah, I enjoyed that one. I don't think it's like my favorite book of all time or anything, but I think it was a lot better than I thought it was gonna be, and it does say some important things. So yeah, that one was good. Then there is Quen by Alice Albinia, and this one is sort of a feminist. I don't know if dystopia is the right word, but it is a feminist text about these islands, I think in Scotland, that traditionally have been more matriarchal focused than other places. It's not like a formal way, but women have taken control of their own lives, and it is structured in places sort of like a trial, and men kind of saying, well, you don't have the right to do this, you're oppressing other men, and like the irony of that when men are oppressing women everywhere else, and that's kind of the idea. I think that the format didn't work very well. I think that some of the ideas were good, but yeah, the judgment, trial bits, and also like every chapter is kind of told from a different woman's perspective from the island. So there's like 12 different perspectives, and it's just too much, and it just doesn't really work. I would have preferred to focus on one character and go through that life with that one character. So yeah, for me personally, it said some interesting things, but it was not fully successful. Then the next one in the list is Small Things Like This by Clark Keegan, and this one is about sort of a family in Ireland, and it talks about these centers where unmarried pregnant women would go, and the bad things that happen there. I thought this was too short to be impactful. I think that if you already know about these places, you might get more out of it, but from not knowing that much perspective, this was not that insightful into the problems or what had really happened, and it just doesn't give you the space to care about the characters. So yeah, for me it was not successful either. I don't think it's a horrible book, but again, it's just not, it just doesn't do enough. Then there is Sterling Karat Cold by Isabel Winder, and this is about this man called Sterling who is detained for no reason apart from being black, and kind of the experience of this boy like until then and after that. But it's told in a very like scattered way, and talks a lot about pop culture, and it has this snarky tone to it that if you find it humorous, then it works. I didn't. So for me, in general, I'm not into books that deal with pop culture so much. So for me, this was a little bit just trying to be smart without doing much. So yeah, I didn't think this was that good, but I think that I understand why other people will like it if you are into that kind of thing. It's a little bit of a, I think maybe in something similar to No One Is Talking About This by Patricia Lockwood, in which if you are into that internet culture, you might find it super interesting. But if you're not, then it just doesn't work for you. So I think this is one of those books that if you really like the pop culture and the insights and the like humor, then you'll like this. But if you are not, you will not really gel with this thing. But yeah, that's I'm glad I read it because that was in my list for a long time. So now I know. Then the Colony by Adri Maguet, I think that's how you pronounce it, maybe. And this one is about an island in Ireland where most people speak Irish as their mother tongue, and there is this French linguist that is studying the island and the language and the evolution of it, and then all of a sudden an Englishman shows up, and this Frenchman is very mad because he's going to change the whole dynamics because he only speaks English, and he talks about that colonizing aspect of things, and also the value of language as a form of identity and a form of national pride, and I found it super interesting. I think that it was quite well done, and yeah, I enjoyed the story, and I also enjoyed the discussions on language. There are some parts in which it feels a bit info dumping into the linguistics of things, but I didn't mind. I found it interesting, so I don't mind. But yeah, be aware that is in there. But yeah, overall, as a book, I think it's a good one. And then the next one that I read is The High House by Jesse Greengrass, and this is in the category of climate change literature. So it's about this family that the mother of the family is really worried about climate change, and she's like, this is like, we need to do something because things are gonna get really bad really fast. And nobody people are normally like, yeah, sure, we have to do something, but they don't feel the urgency. And then it happens. So she made arrangements for her kids to be safe in this house that they call the High House. And we kind of see I like the book that focused on the change. So it's not post-apocalyptic in that sense. It's not about what happens after. It's about the change. It's about how fast and how drastic it is. Like the climate activists and the climate scientists say that it's gonna be, but we kind of don't believe them. We don't have that urgency, and then we see the urgency once it happens. So I did like that it took that approach to it, because I think it reinforces the message that this is urgent, even though if we are not able to process it beforehand. It was told from 3 different perspectives. In the house there is Grandy, which is the grandfather, Sally, who is the granddaughter, and they are kind of the caretakers of the house. And then there is Caro and Polly. So Caro and Polly are the actual children of Francesca, which is the mother that prepared everything. But Caro is not her actual. Carol is the stepdaughter, and then Polly is the son of this woman that organized everything, but then she didn't make it because she was fighting for change, political change, while that happened, and she didn't make it, basically. So we see it from the perspective of Sally, Caro, and Polly, especially the 2 women, Caro and Sally. And to be honest, I found it hard sometimes to differentiate between the 2. Their voices were quite similar, and I think also the voice of the boy was not super strong. But it was enough that I care about the characters, but not enough to make them real. But I think the discussion on climate change was quite apt without being preachy. But yeah. So I like this one. I just don't know if it was the best book I've read. And the last one I read was There Are More Things by Yara Rodriguez Fowler. And this one I also really liked. I don't think it's like high literature or anything, but I really liked. I found it really endearing in some way. So it's about, at the beginning of the book, we see these 2 women, Katarina and Melissa. Katarina is looking for a place, so she moves into the place where Melissa lives in London. They become roommates, and Melissa has difficult past because she grew up in London. She was born in London, but her mother is Brazilian, and her father left quite easy and quite fast. And of course, like single mother, it's always a little bit harder, and they had a not always easy relationship. And then the mother died when Melissa was not a child but relatively young, so she has some trauma related to that, and to like she doesn't know how to identify as Brazilian. And then Catarina is fully a Brazilian person, that she just moved to London a year before to start her PhD. And I found the roommate dynamics really relatable, because I have also had that kind of relationship before I moved out, of all these people in their 20s trying to make it and having different paths, and trying to also make friends and have fun, but not like fun as in which when you're like 18 years old, then you have to try everything. Like you're already a bit within yourself, but you still are young. So I found that really relatable. And both of these people have certain past within Brazil, so there's full sections that go back to Brazil and explore those pasts, and also the political situation in Brazil. So the roommate timeline is when Dalma was impeached, and kind of there were a lot of unrest in Brazil, political unrest. So that is in the book, all of this political stuff. Also Brexit is happening, and so Catarina is very unsure of how her visa is gonna work then. All these little things are in the book, and I enjoyed those little things. I also enjoyed the relationship between the two roommates, and it's also like the writing style is a very easy to read style. So there is normal sections, but the chapters are never too long. But there are also sections when it's just maybe like a poem or a sound or a sentence or something like that. So it goes it's one of those things that makes you just go on, because it's just like little snippets of things rather than this long narrative. And yeah, I found it engaging and relatable in many ways, and I like this one. So yeah, for me, my favorites, I think, from this list is A Passage North, Assembly, The Colony, and there are more things. I think the one that I would prefer to win is The Colony, just because as a piece of literature I think it's the most crafted one, or maybe A Passage North. It's also very crafted in terms of literary merit, but I think the Orwell Prize is also about the political unrest and the political conversation. So I don't know if that's their criteria, but those are the two that I think have the most literary merit. The one that I enjoy the most would be, I think the one that for me was the most enjoyable and the most warmy feeling was There Are More Things, which again, it was a completely different thing from what I thought it was gonna be. I thought it was gonna be about consumerism and stuff, but I mean, there's a little bit of that, because Catarina is very active politically and environmentally, but it's not about that. But still, what it was about, I really enjoyed. So yeah, I am happy that I followed the prize and read the list, because there were some books that I enjoyed from the list, and none of them were too long. I mean, the longest was There Are More Things, but there was so much white space and sounds and things and poems that it didn't feel very long. So yeah, those are my thoughts on the Orwell Prize. I think the winner is going to be announced Thursday, so tomorrow when I'm filming this, and we will see what wins. But those are my thoughts. Let me know if you have read any of these books, if you are interested in any of these books, and in the next video. Bye!